Money can buy almost anything, but not respect. And in this courtroom, respect is the only currency that matters. When Logan Pierce, a 22-year-old heir to a real estate empire, swaggered into the courtroom with designer sunglasses and a smirk that could cut glass, everyone knew what kind of day it was going to be. He wasn't just confident, he was untouchable. At least that's what he thought. His father's lawyers lined the benches. His friends whispered from the gallery, filming on their phones, waiting for the moment he'd own the judge. Because that's what Logan did best. Bend rules, mock authority, and flash his last name like a shield. But what he didn't realize was that he had just stepped into the one place in America where his name meant nothing. Across the bench sat an experienced female judge. Silver hair, black robe, eyes sharp as razors. She'd seen arrogance dressed in every disguise imaginable. Suits, uniforms, even smiles. But this one was special. The kind that demanded to be broken down. The tension was immediate. He laughed. She didn't. He pushed. She didn't move, and by the time the gavel fell, Logan Pierce would learn a truth that money can't erase. When justice walks into the room, your bank account doesn't follow you, because in this courtroom, arrogance isn't a privilege, it's evidence. The marble steps of the courthouse gleamed beneath the morning sun, a temple of justice that looked more like a museum than a battlefield. But for Logan Pierce, it was just another place where he expected to win. He adjusted his tailored jacket, straightened his cufflinks, and flashed a grin to the waiting cameras. "Logan! Over here. Any comments before your hearing?" He turned toward the flashing lights, all charm and swagger. "Yeah," he said into the microphones. "I'm sure the judge will understand it was all a misunderstanding. Happens to the best of us, the best of us." That was how Logan saw himself, a walking brand of perfection. The kind of man who could crash his imported car, insult the responding officers, and still be out in time for brunch. His father's name, Richard Pierce, real estate titan and political donor, had always been his get-out-of-jail-free card. From private academies to public scandals, there was always a lawyer waiting to fix things. Today was supposed to be no different. Reckless endangerment, property damage, disorderly conduct, minor inconveniences for a Pierce. As his entourage followed him inside, Logan smirked to his best friend Evan, who was already filming for his behind-the-scenes vlog. "Watch this," Logan whispered. "It's going to be the easiest 5 minutes of my life." Inside Courtroom 7A, the air was heavy with authority. Wooden benches, polished floors, and a silence that demanded respect. A silence Logan immediately broke. "Nice setup," he muttered loudly. "Could use some better lighting." A few chuckles rippled from the back. But one person didn't laugh. At the bench sat Judge Eleanor Briggs, the experienced female judge with silver hair tucked neatly behind her shoulders, black robe perfectly pressed, and eyes that could slice through stone. She had seen it all. Liars, hustlers, abusers, charmers. But the wealthy sons of powerful men, they were her specialty. She looked up from the file in front of her. "Mr. Logan Pierce," he offered a mock salute. "That's me." Her voice was calm but sharp. "Please refrain from speaking unless addressed." He smiled. "Yes, ma'am. Just being polite." Her eyes flickered up again. "I wasn't asking for charm, Mr. Pierce. I was asking for silence." The courtroom snickered quietly. Logan's smirk faltered. Just a little. The prosecutor, Miriam Clark, stood. "Your Honor, the state is prepared to proceed. The defendant is charged with reckless endangerment, destruction of public property, and obstruction of law enforcement. We have traffic footage, witness statements, and audio from the responding officer." Judge Briggs nodded. "Begin." The footage played on a monitor. A sleek black Aston Martin speeding through a red light, swerving onto a sidewalk, scattering pedestrians before crashing into a public fountain. Gasps filled the courtroom. Then came the audio. "Sir, step out of the vehicle." Logan's voice, slurred but smug, replied, "Relax, officer." "Do you know who my father is?" The judge paused the video. "Do you have anything to add, Mr. Pierce?" He leaned forward, feigning innocence. "Yeah, I didn't hit anyone, and the fountain's insured. No harm, no foul." Her gaze didn't move. "Do you consider risking lives a minor inconvenience?" He shrugged. "Look, nobody got hurt. It's not that deep." For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights. Then the judge said softly, "It's as deep as your reflection, Mr. Pierce. You just haven't looked long enough." His attorney, Mr. Davis, cleared his throat nervously. Your Honor, my client acknowledges the unfortunate nature of the incident. However, he has expressed remorse. Remorse? Judge Briggs interrupted. I've heard none. Logan's father, Richard, sat in the front row, face unreadable. But even he shifted uncomfortably. His empire could buy land, not dignity. The judge continued. Mr. Pierce, tell me, how many traffic violations have you accumulated in the past year? Maybe 4? 6, she corrected. And how many times have charges been dismissed? He smiled. All of them. Because of legal settlements, not innocence. Tomato, he said casually. Her eyes narrowed. Do you find the law amusing? He smirked. Only when it tries too hard. The room went completely still. Judge Briggs took off her glasses and folded them neatly on the bench. Mr. Pierce, let me explain something. This courtroom is not a boardroom, and your father's name is not a currency here. He leaned back. With all due respect, Your Honor. Respect, she interrupted, is earned, not inherited. You're about to learn that the hard way. Her tone was calm, almost surgical. But everyone could feel the tension shift, the balance of power flipping without a word. Evan stopped recording. Even he knew this wasn't content anymore. This was the beginning of something Logan couldn't control. The prosecution called its first witness. Officer Marquez, the one who'd arrested Logan. Officer, Miriam began, can you describe the defendant's behavior during arrest? Marquez nodded. He was dismissive, argumentative, and refused to provide identification. He repeatedly stated, quote, I don't answer to people who can't afford my car. Laughter erupted, quickly silenced by the judge's glare. Mr. Pierce, the judge said, did you make that statement? He sighed. I might have said something like that, yeah. But come on, everyone was overreacting. Overreacting? She repeated. You endangered 6 pedestrians, destroyed city property, and verbally assaulted an officer. What do you call appropriate reaction? He grinned. A fine, maybe some community service. Let's not be dramatic. Mr. Pierce, she said, her voice low. If you confuse accountability with drama, you're not as intelligent as your transcript claims. That line drew a ripple of murmurs. Logan's jaw tightened. After recess, the courtroom returned to silence. Judge Briggs leaned forward. Mr. Pierce, you seem confident that wealth can insulate you from consequence. Would you like to test that theory? His smile flickered. Are you threatening me, Your Honor? No, she replied. I'm educating you. She opened a folder. Your father's financial influence is well documented. But here your last name is nothing more than ink. I'm interested in your actions, not your inheritance. She gestured toward the bailiff. Officer, bring in the city maintenance worker. A man in a reflective vest entered, middle-aged, nervous, holding a clipboard. This, the judge said, is Mr. Alan Diaz. He's the one who spent 9 hours repairing the damage you caused to that fountain. Mr. Diaz, please describe the cost of that work. About $12,000, Your Honor, plus overtime. And your hourly wage? $21? The judge turned to Logan. That means you made him work nearly 600 hours to clean up your carelessness. Any thoughts on that? He shifted uncomfortably. I'll pay him double. Money again, she said softly. You truly think everything has a price? Logan crossed his arms. You're twisting my words. I don't need to, she said calmly. They twist themselves. The courtroom was silent again, thick with realization. For the first time, the invincible Logan Pierce didn't have a comeback. Judge Briggs looked at the clock. We'll reconvene tomorrow. I suggest you spend the evening thinking about how you plan to prove to this court that you're more than your last name. He rose abruptly. And if I don't? She looked at him evenly. Then tomorrow, Mr. Pierce, we'll find out just how much your arrogance costs, when you're no longer the one writing the check. Her gavel struck once, echoing through the chamber. Outside, reporters swarmed again, but Logan didn't stop for interviews. He slid into the back of his father's car, face pale. Richard Pierce broke the silence. You think she'll go easy? Logan forced a laugh. She can't do much. It's a misdemeanor. His father looked out the window. You really don't get it, do you? That woman doesn't care about charges. She cares about character. Logan frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Richard said quietly, that for the first time in your life, you've met someone who can't be bought. Logan didn't answer. For the first time, he didn't have a clever line or a rehearsed grin. For the first time, he felt small. That night, he scrolled through his phone, watching clips of himself smirking in court. The comments were brutal. Rich boy getting humbled. Finally, a judge who won't bow. Money can't fix stupidity. For the first time, the laughter wasn't with him. It was at him. He threw the phone aside and stared at the ceiling, wondering for the first time in his life if maybe, just maybe, his father was right. The following morning, the courthouse was quieter than usual, the buzz of yesterday's spectacle replaced by an uneasy calm. Logan Pierce walked in slower this time. The swagger was still there, but it had softened, buried under a flicker of unease. He wore the same designer suit, though his tie was crooked. No cameras followed him this time. Even the reporters had lost interest. But inside the courtroom, one person hadn't. Judge Eleanor Briggs. When he entered, she was already there, reading through a stack of case files. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. "Mr. Pierce," she said, voice firm, "you're late." By what, 2 minutes? By 2 minutes too many. He opened his mouth to argue, but stopped when her eyes finally met his. They weren't angry. They were tired, the kind of tired that came from watching too many people throw away chances they didn't deserve. She motioned toward his chair. "Sit." He obeyed. The prosecutor, Miriam Clark, stood again, but this time her tone was different, colder, more deliberate. "Your Honor, after yesterday's hearing, additional evidence came to light. The defendant was seen on social media mocking the proceedings." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mocking?" "Yes," Miriam said, holding up a printed screenshot. It showed a post from one of Logan's friends. "Our boy owning the courtroom, jars Pierce power." Below it, a tagged comment from Logan himself. "Can't wait to get my slap on the wrist and a round of golf after." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Logan's stomach dropped. He turned to Evan, sitting 2 rows back, who gave a helpless shrug. Judge Briggs stared at the image for a long moment before placing it down. "Mr. Pierce, would you like to explain this?" He fumbled. "It was a joke. You didn't mean to post it, or you didn't mean to get caught." The silence that followed was suffocating. The judge leaned forward slightly. "You think this is a performance, Mr. Pierce? That justice is some kind of social experiment for your followers?" "No," he said quickly. "I was just blowing off steam." "Steam," she repeated. "Tell me, Mr. Pierce, how much steam do you think the people cleaning up your mess had when they worked overnight repairing that fountain?" He said nothing. "That's what I thought," she said. "Continue, Ms. Clark," Miriam nodded. "The state recommends additional penalties for contempt, given the defendant's ongoing mockery of these proceedings." Logan's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client's actions..." The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Davis, your client has spoken loudly enough without your help." Then, for the first time since the case began, Judge Briggs closed the file in front of her. She looked directly at Logan. "Mr. Pierce, I was prepared yesterday to consider leniency, but you seem determined to test this court's patience. So, I'm going to give you exactly what you've been asking for." He frowned. "Which is?" "Accountability." Her voice was calm, but it carried weight. "This court hereby orders the defendant to serve 60 hours of mandatory civic labor under the supervision of Officer Alan Diaz, the same man who repaired your damages." The courtroom stirred. "Wait," Logan blurted. "You're making me work with him? Like physically?" "Yes," she said. "And you will report every morning at 7 a.m. sharp. If you fail to show, the state will pursue contempt charges, and your father's influence will be irrelevant." Logan's jaw dropped. "You can't..." "I just did." Her gavel struck once, sharp and final. The next morning, Logan was standing outside the city maintenance yard in clothes he'd never worn before. Jeans, gloves, and a safety vest that smelled faintly of oil and regret. Alan Diaz arrived moments later, carrying a clipboard and a thermos of coffee. "You must be the boss's kid," he said, without looking up. Logan exhaled. "Something like that." "Good, grab a broom." Logan looked around. "You serious? Do I look like I'm joking?" He didn't. And so the heir to the Pierce fortune spent the next 3 hours sweeping sidewalks under the scorching sun. He tried to keep his distance from the crew, but they didn't care about his name. To them, he was just another guy in an orange vest who couldn't hold a broom right. By noon, his hands blistered. By 3, his pride cracked. When the shift ended, Alan walked up beside him. "You're not used to this, huh?" Logan wiped sweat from his forehead. You think? Alan nodded. Yeah, I can tell. You treat work like punishment. But work's just life. Some of us don't get to skip it. Logan rolled his eyes. Spare me the lecture, Alan shrugged. Wasn't giving one. You'll figure it out. Or you won't. The following days blurred together. Trash bags, rakes, paint rollers. Logan hated every second. People recognized him occasionally, snapping photos or muttering about the rich kid doing community service. Every picture burned deeper than any sentence could. One afternoon, a group of high schoolers passed by. One of them laughed, Yo, Pierce! Where's your Ferrari now? Logan froze, jaw clenched. Alan watched quietly. Don't, Alan said. I'm not going to hit him. Good, Alan said. Because that'd be the first smart thing you've done all week. By the end of the week, something unexpected started to happen. Logan stopped looking at the clock. He began working, not because he wanted to, but because it was easier than arguing. He noticed the rhythm of labor, the scrape of brooms, the clink of tools, the quiet satisfaction of a clean street, and for the first time in his life, nobody cared who he was. One morning, as he was painting over graffiti, a little girl tugged at his sleeve. Thank you for fixing the park, she said shyly, handing him a juice box. He blinked. You're welcome. Alan smiled faintly from a distance. That night, when Logan showered, he noticed his hands again. Not manicured, not perfect, calloused, real. But the past doesn't die quietly. A week later, Logan arrived at the site to find a group of reporters waiting. Someone had tipped them off. Cameras flashed. Mr. Pierce, how does it feel to finally do real work? Is this court-ordered humility? Logan looked up, angry, not at them, but at himself. This was exactly the kind of spectacle he used to create. Alan stepped between him and the cameras. Back off, he said. He's serving his sentence, not starring in one. The reporters backed off reluctantly. When they left, Alan turned to him. Now you know how it feels to be on the other side of the lens. Logan nodded. Yeah, not fun. Good, Alan said. Maybe that means it's working. The next morning, Logan was summoned back to court for a review hearing. He walked in quietly this time, no smirk, no entourage. Just him, and the faint smell of paint still clinging to his clothes. Judge Briggs looked up as he entered. Mr. Pierce, she said, how's your civic education progressing? He took a deep breath. Harder than I expected. That's good, she said. Growth usually is. He hesitated. I still think some of this is overkill. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Do you still think you're untouchable? He looked down. No, just uncomfortable. She leaned forward. Uncomfortable isn't bad, Mr. Pierce. It's the space between who you are and who you could be. For the first time, he didn't roll his eyes. I'll keep showing up, he said quietly. She smiled faintly. That's a start. Her gavel struck once, not to punish, but to remind him that the story wasn't over. And as Logan left the courtroom, something heavy and unfamiliar settled in his chest. It wasn't shame. It was responsibility. A gray rain fell over the city that morning, slow, steady, cleansing. Logan Pierce stood in it, drenched in both water and reflection. The streets he once sped through without a care now glistened with the echo of his mistakes. Beside him, Alan Diaz handed him a rain poncho. You don't have to be here today, Alan said. Technically, court canceled shifts during bad weather. Logan shook his head. I want to be. That was the first time Alan saw it. Sincerity. Not performance. Not posture. Just truth. Suit yourself, he said, hiding a grin. Let's get to work. They repainted curb lines for hours. Rain mixing with yellow paint until both men looked like abstract art. Logan didn't complain once. It wasn't until his phone buzzed, relentlessly, that reality reminded him who he'd been. Dozens of missed calls from his father, and one message that simply read, "Get to the courthouse." Now. When he arrived, drenched and still wearing the orange vest, the courtroom was already full. Reporters again, flashbulbs, whispers. His heart sank. At the bench sat Judge Eleanor Briggs, her expression unreadable. To her right, Miriam Clark shuffled papers. To her left sat a man in a dark suit, his father, Richard Pierce. Mr. Pierce, the judge began, eyes fixed on Logan. I was informed your father has filed a motion to dismiss your civic sentence. What? Logan blurted. Richard stood. Your Honor, with all due respect, my son has completed sufficient hours to demonstrate remorse. He has family business obligations that require his immediate attention. I'm requesting early termination. Judge Briggs looked to Logan. Do you agree with this request? He hesitated. Richard cut him off. Of course he does. The judge's gaze sharpened. Mr. Pierce Sr., this is your son's case, not yours. The silence was instant. For perhaps the first time in his life, Richard was reminded what real authority looked like, and it wasn't his. Eleanor turned to Logan again. Mr. Pierce, answer the question. Do you want this case dismissed? Logan's throat tightened. He glanced at his father's stern expression, then at Alan, sitting quietly in the back row, watching. He swallowed. I think I should finish it. His father's jaw dropped. Logan? No, Dad. Logan turned to him. I messed this up. I should see it through. The judge's expression softened, barely. Continue, Mr. Pierce. I used to think punishment was about embarrassment. But now I get it. It's about learning something you can't buy. I haven't finished learning yet, the courtroom murmured. The cameras clicked. Richard glared. You're humiliating yourself. Logan shook his head. No, Dad, I'm fixing myself. Judge Briggs let the silence breathe before speaking again. That is a refreshing answer. She tapped her pen once, the faintest hint of pride flickering behind her steady composure. Your motion is denied, she said to Richard. Mr. Pierce Jr. will complete his civic labor as ordered. Richard tried to object, but she raised a hand. Sit down, Mr. Pierce. Your money can't overrule this court. A murmur of agreement filled the gallery. Logan glanced back at Alan, who gave him a quiet nod, the kind of silent approval that said, Now you're getting it. After court adjourned, Logan caught up with his father in the hallway. You didn't have to do that, he said. Richard's voice was low but cutting. I built this family name from nothing, and you're dragging it through the mud. I'm cleaning it, Logan replied simply. His father scoffed. By sweeping gutters? Yeah, by actually doing something real for once. Richard stared at him. Not angry, just lost. It was as if he was looking at a stranger. You sound like her, he said. Who? The judge. Logan smiled faintly. Maybe that's not a bad thing. He walked away before his father could respond. Weeks passed. Logan finished his required hours, but he didn't stop showing up. Alan noticed it first. You know your sentence is over, right? I know, Logan said, picking up another paint roller. But the work's not, Alan grinned. Didn't think I'd ever say this, but you're not half bad at this, Logan chuckled. Careful? I might put that on my resume. By the end of that week, Logan had not only repaired his own mess, but also started volunteering at a local youth program. He spoke to teenagers about accountability, the kind of speech he would have laughed at a month ago. At first, the kids rolled their eyes. But then he told them about his story, the crash, the arrogance, the humiliation. By the time he finished, they weren't laughing anymore. One kid raised his hand. So, the judge actually made you clean the streets? Yeah, Logan said. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. The kids smirked. You're weird, man, Logan laughed. Yeah, maybe. The next morning, he received another summons. Final review hearing. When he arrived, the courtroom felt different, lighter, not hostile, but ceremonial. The gallery was full again, though this time it wasn't all reporters. Some of the same workers he'd labored beside were there, even Alan. Judge Briggs entered, and the room rose. Her voice was calm but measured. Mr. Pierce, we are here to determine whether your service and behavior have met the conditions of your sentence. Logan stood tall. Yes, Your Honor. According to your supervisor, not only did you complete the required hours, but you continued volunteering beyond them. Is that correct? He nodded. Yes, ma'am. Why? He took a deep breath. Because it stopped being punishment. I realized I'd been treating life like a loophole. This helped me see it's not about getting away with things. It's about owning them. For a moment, Eleanor said nothing. Then quietly, and what about respect? He smiled slightly. Turns out you were right. It's earned. A ripple of approval swept through the courtroom. Alan grinned from the back row. Even Miriam, the prosecutor, looked impressed. Eleanor tapped her pen again. Mr. Pierce, I seldom say this, but I'm proud of your progress. Therefore, this court formally recognizes your sentence as fulfilled. A collective breath filled the room. Logan exhaled slowly. Relief, but not escape, gratitude. However, she continued, before we close, I want you to remember something. You were born into privilege, but privilege doesn't excuse, it obligates. You now understand the weight of that word. Carry it carefully. Yes, Your Honor, he said softly. Her eyes softened. I believe you will. Her gavel came down one final time, not as punishment, but as closure. After court, Logan approached her bench quietly. Thank you, he said. She didn't smile, but her tone carried warmth. Don't thank me, Mr. Pierce. You did the work. He hesitated. Still, I don't think I would have done it without you. Maybe not, she said. But the point isn't what I made you do. It's what you chose to keep doing. He nodded. I think I finally get that. As he turned to leave, she called out softly, Mr. Pierce? He stopped. You said earlier that rules used to feel like restrictions, she said. Do they still? He smiled. No, ma'am. Now they feel like guidance. She nodded once, satisfied. Outside the courthouse, Alan was waiting with 2 coffees. He handed one to Logan. So, big shot, what's next? Logan chuckled. Maybe finish college. Maybe start something of my own. Construction company? He laughed. You think I'd survive one day without you? Alan grinned. You'd find a way, just keep your head straight. You've got a good one now. As they walked away from the courthouse, the sky broke open. The rain had stopped. Sunlight poured over the marble steps like a second chance. Logan looked back once, not to admire the building, but to acknowledge the woman inside it. The one who had finally made him see himself clearly. He whispered to no one in particular, "Thank you." And for the first time in his life, he didn't need an audience to mean it. The courthouse was quiet now. No flashing cameras, no whispers, no tension. Just the slow hum of air vents and the echo of purpose left behind. For Logan Pierce, this building wasn't a battleground anymore. It was a place of transformation. 3 months had passed since his final hearing. 3 months since the gavel fell. Not on his arrogance, but on his rebirth. He'd done the impossible, disappeared from headlines. No more rich kid rebel features, no paparazzi at the gym, no TMZ reels mocking his courtroom meltdown. It was as though the world had forgotten him. But for once, he was grateful for that. Logan sat at a small desk in his modest downtown apartment, scrolling through an email. It was from Alan Diaz, the man who had unknowingly become his mentor. Hey, kid. City's expanding the civic reform program. Need a spokesperson. Thought you might want to lend your face to something real this time. Coffee at 10? He smiled. The old Logan would have seen that as charity. The new one saw it as trust. He arrived early. Alan was already there, sipping coffee at a corner booth. When Logan walked in, the man grinned. Look at you. Punctual, clean-shaven, and not yelling at anyone. I almost didn't recognize you, Logan laughed. Trying something new. Accountability. Alan raised an eyebrow. Dangerous habit? Might stick. They talked for hours. About the program, the kids, and how the city wanted to use Logan's story to launch a youth mentorship initiative, teaching teenagers that mistakes didn't define them, but refusing to learn from them did. You think they'll take me seriously? Logan asked. Alan leaned back. You're the perfect cautionary tale, Pierce. You've lived both sides, privilege and humility. You're not preaching. You're proof, Logan nodded slowly. Then I'm in. A week later, Logan stood before a crowd of high school students in a community gym. He wore no designer suit, just jeans, a plain shirt, and honesty. Behind him hung a banner. Respect is earned, a civic youth project. He looked at the faces in front of him. Curious, skeptical, expectant. A mirror of the arrogance he once carried. He started quietly. I used to think rules were obstacles, that they existed to hold people like me back. Turns out they were the only things trying to hold me up. The room fell silent. I wasn't punished, he continued. I was educated, weighed by a judge who didn't care about my last name, only my choices. She didn't humiliate me. She gave me a mirror. And for the first time, I saw someone I didn't respect. A murmur moved through the audience. Even the tough kids in the back stopped whispering. Logan pointed toward the exit sign. You see that door? You can walk through it one day with your head high, or with a record behind you. That choice starts now, with one decision. With whether or not you believe you're above the rules. He paused, letting it sink in. Because if you think you're untouchable, trust me, the law has a way of reminding you that you're not. Afterward, the applause came. Not polite, but genuine. The kind that said, "We see you." Alan clapped from the back, proud but understated. As the kids lined up to thank him, Logan realized something profound. The same courtroom that had once stripped him down had rebuilt him from the inside out. Justice hadn't destroyed him. It had rewritten him. A month later, Logan received a letter at his office. The return address was from the courthouse. He recognized the handwriting instantly. Judge Eleanor Briggs, Mr. Pierce. I heard about your community program. Congratulations. You've turned a lesson into a legacy. Not many do. I once told you that privilege obligates. Keep using yours to lift others. P.S. Your father sent a donation to the Reform Initiative. Perhaps the apple doesn't fall quite so far after all. Respectfully, Honier Eleanor Briggs. Logan exhaled, laughing softly. She's still teaching me, he muttered. He placed the letter in a frame beside his desk. Next to a photograph from the youth event, himself and Alan standing side by side, surrounded by the kids. Below it, the plaque read, "From defendant to mentor." Later that week, Logan's father invited him to dinner. The first one in months. The old tension was still there, but something had shifted. Richard wasn't the booming, untouchable mogul tonight. He was just a father, humbled by what his son had become. I saw the news, Richard said quietly, slicing into his steak. You're doing good work. Thanks, Logan replied. Didn't think you were paying attention. I wasn't, Richard admitted, until I saw your speech on TV. Reminded me of someone I used to be, before money made me forget. Logan smiled faintly. Guess we both had to learn the hard way. His father chuckled. Seems to run in the family. They shared silence, not awkward, but healing. Years of unspoken disappointment melted into mutual understanding. As they left the restaurant, Richard placed a hand on his son's shoulder. You made me proud, Logan. Truly. This time, Logan didn't shrug it off. Thanks, Dad. That night, he drove home past the same courthouse that once humiliated him. He parked and stepped out, walking up the familiar marble steps. The building glowed in the amber light of street lamps. He stood there for a long time, remembering everything, the smirk, the shame, the silence that followed the gavel. He whispered softly, Thank you, Judge Briggs. Then, almost on instinct, he took a gold cufflink from his pocket, the last relic of his old self, and placed it on the courthouse steps. A quiet offering, a symbol of closure. Months passed, and Logan's reform program grew citywide. He became the youngest civic ambassador the county had ever appointed. His speeches were raw, personal, powerful, but he never took credit. Every time he was introduced, he would smile and say, Don't thank me. Thank the woman who taught me that rules aren't there to limit you. They're there to guide you home. And somewhere, retired in a quiet coastal town, Judge Eleanor Briggs would occasionally see him on the news. She'd smile faintly, sip her tea, and whisper, Looks like he finally listened. One rainy evening, as Logan closed his office, he found a young intern lingering by the door. Nervous, uncertain, clutching a traffic citation in her hand. Mr. Pierce. I think I'm in trouble, she said. I messed up. And I don't know what to do, Logan smiled kindly. First thing? Don't run from it. He pulled up a chair, gesturing for her to sit. Let me tell you a story about the time I thought I was untouchable. As he spoke, his voice carried the weight of experience, not as a victim, but as proof that justice, when delivered with wisdom, could change more than just behavior. It could change hearts. The city lights flickered outside his window, reflecting against the glass. For a moment, his reflection aligned perfectly with the courthouse across the street. He thought of the judge. The gavel? The lessons that had rebuilt him. In a world obsessed with wealth and image, he had found something far rarer. Character. And that, he realized, was the one thing privilege could never buy.